Attention young filmmakers, you are being duped. Time to wisen up, Weisenheimers.
It's time for Hollywood Grump.
Hey everybody, welcome to Hollywood Grump. I am the Grump, aka Negative Nelly, aka the Stick in the Mud, aka Captain James T. Irked. Here on Hollywood Grump, we talk about everything from new and vintage gear, including testing and reviews, to surviving the business of Hollywood, to stuff that just sticks in my craw. All through the lens of a man who's so impatient. Come on, let's go. For all you gear nerds out there, today's episode is shot on a circa 1978 Nikkor 50mm f1.8. A gorgeous, shockingly sharp, even wide open lens, but not so sharp as to look clinical or digital. Absolutely loaded with character. I love the look of this lens. There is an f1.4 version of this lens, but I personally don't think it's nearly as good for overall picture quality, so save your money. I got this cherry in mint condition still in the box on eBay for just around $85, so if you can find one for around that price, I highly suggest picking one up and making some magic with it. Let me know in the comments below how you think this lens looks, and remember, the lens is not soft around the edges, the host is. Okay, let's get right down to the cojones of this. In the world of video production, there once existed a horrible, rotten, terrible, no good practice. One that I'm sorry to say is rearing its ugly head again. I'm talking about the wolf in sheep's clothing, working for credits. Over the years, I've been asked by young filmmakers whether or not working for credits is a good idea. But since starting this channel just a few months ago, I've been emailed no less than 30 times about this very topic, an indication that this nonsense is becoming popular again. So I'd like to set the record straight based on my own road-worn experience. There's a short answer and a long answer, so first, the short answer. Never work for credits. Actually, let me clarify that. Never, ever work for credits. Now, a qualified answer takes a little explaining. For those of you that haven't been presented with this diamond-coated offer, let me explain how it works. And I'm gonna let clients, in the grander sense of the word, off the hook for once. This request more often than not comes from production companies, which technically would be your client in this case, but in a pass-through sort of way, if you get what I'm talking about. The production company posts up a project looking for crew to work on it. Typically something kind of vague, like audio op needed for a 2-day shoot in San Diego, with no real details in the post. You, as a young go-getter eager to keep your career moving forward, respond to the ad. You'll normally be communicating with an associate producer, or what's sometimes called a line producer, which is a producer in charge of personnel and budgets for a shoot, a topic we'll talk about in a later episode. Regardless of their title, this representative will often regale you with all the magical, wonderful, glittering reasons you should take on this project. Whether that's a good cause, an incredible opportunity, or just a really fun project to work on, suffice it to say the project will be fully frosted and covered with delicious sprinkles by the time this person is done describing it to you, and by the time the subject of the budget comes up, at which point the other shoe drops. We don't have a budget for this crew position, but it's really incredible exposure. They might add that you'll be working for some very, very high-level producers, directors, cinematographers on this one, so it's a great opportunity to get your name on their radar. This is the point in the conversation where you should scream something like, "Oh my God, the dog just ate the baby," and swiftly hang up the phone. While the actual word was never mentioned, this is what's called working for credits. Back in my college days, I played in a little band. We were good, not great, but good enough to play in the local bars and clubs. Back in those days, which seems like 150 years ago now, bars and clubs would put on what was called showcase nights, and it's probably called something different these days. Showcase nights were when bands were invited to play at the club for free, even though they were taking a cover at the door, to give the band some exposure. In talking with a friend that had a really great band in the 80s, some clubs would actually require you to sell your own tickets in order to play in the showcase, meaning they gave you 20 tickets and you had to sell them all to fill the club. In most cases, even if you were the greatest band known to mankind, by the time the next band got on stage, even the name of your band was forgotten, let alone your music. And you are also responsible for all of your own expenses, food and drink, what have you. So not only are you not getting paid, you're not even getting free food and beverages. And those tickets you were supposed to sell, if you didn't, guess who's on the hook for it? I mention this not out of nostalgia, but because it feels to me like this practice in the music world was the precursor, or maybe a better word is the catalyst, to the working for credits phenomenon. And maybe a better word for phenomenon is ploy. Aside from the money-grubbing, penny-pinching shittiness of this practice, here's why I tell everybody never to work for credits. And trust me, I know how enticing this opportunity can be. You're desperate to get your career moving. It's a cool opportunity to work on something that your name might be attached to. There's a panic deep in your soul that you won't actually make it, that all your hard work and schooling will never ever pay off. But I hope and pray you will listen to this advice in the spirit in which it's intended, to save you, the young filmmaker, from being duped. First, burn these words into your brain and remember them forever. No matter what stage of your career you're in, no matter who you are, your time has value. And don't let anyone ever, big or small, try to convince you otherwise. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned professional, your time has value. You're an artist who has suffered and paid their way through school. In most cases, you own your own equipment. You deserve to be paid for that. The value of your time certainly goes up the more experience you have, but it absolutely does not start at zero. Let me step back and say there's a big difference between working for credits and earning your bones. That's something we'll talk about in a little bit. So, to that end, assign yourself an hourly rate. Any number. Just a number to use as a gauge. And don't be an idiot and think you're so amazing you can start your rate off at $200 an hour. Take it easy, you're not the second coming. You stink on ice like all of us did when we first got started. A good rule of thumb that seems to work is assign yourself about $25 for your first year of professional work, and then add about $10 an hour for every year you work in the business after that. And only a very precious few, myself not included, ever surpass the $250 an hour mark. So that's about the cap, inflation notwithstanding. Now, let's take our magical opportunity in San Diego as an example. Assume minus meals and so on, you'll be working 2 8-hour days, so a total of 16 hours. And much like the band showcase nights I mentioned, unless you've negotiated it in advance, you'll likely be paying your own expenses. That means stuff as small as gas money and snacks, up to something as huge as your lodging costs. So unless you live there or have a friend that lives in San Diego, you'll probably be paying for a hotel. And you can try to negotiate for expenses, it's not gonna happen. If they're not gonna pay you for the gig, they're sure as hell not gonna pay you for your hotel, which means most of these opportunities are open to local talent only. Let's be uber conservative and say that your total out-of-pocket expenses are gonna be $100. So 16 hours at $25 an hour, plus $100 in expenses equals $500. So the question becomes, if someone told you that you could pay $500 for the possibility, not a guarantee, the possibility that you might get some exposure with some high-level people, is that worth the gamble? Even if you've been in the business for a little while, do you have that kind of disposable cash to drop on a really risky one-time self-promotion? If you do, congratulations. Because I can tell you for damn sure, I did not have that kind of spare money to throw around when I got started. Assigning yourself an hourly rate is the absolute best first blush determination as to whether or not any project you take is worth the time and energy. In fact, for me, the hourly rate extends beyond my business life and into my personal life. Once again, I can thank my brilliant, dearly departed grandfather for this. The number is lower, but the principle is exactly the same. Let's say my time in my personal life is worth $40 an hour. It's a nice round number. Now my dishwasher breaks. As I'm not very mechanically inclined, it's gonna take me 8 hours and $40 in parts to fix my dishwasher. Or the dishwasher repairman can come to my house and in under an hour, fix the thing for $250. Yeah, come on in, Joe. I'll leave a check on the counter. Using this unit of measure, I have some method of gauging what activities are worth my time. Whether it's $5 an hour or $500 an hour, it's some benchmark to help you determine those things. A benchmark for judging any time investment decisions you need to make in your life. Your time has value. Do not forget it. Secondly, it will take you forever to make up the lost income on that freebie. Even on the very small chance that the exposure you got does lead to future gigs, you're still essentially in the hole $500 from the free project that you did. So unless your hourly or day rate magically jumps up $100 an hour on the next project, it's going to take you a long, long time to make up that loss. If you ever do. I often make the analogy that working for credits is like sleep for new parents. For anyone with small children or babies, you'll be able to relate to this pretty readily. As new parents, you constantly lose out on precious, precious sleep. Whether you're dealing with feeding and changing, bouts of colic, or just trying to get the baby to sleep through the night, you are existing on 20% of your normal sleep schedule, at best. As your kids get older, add in nightmares, nighttime potty training accidents, or dealing with the flu that they caught in the bacteria frappe that is elementary school. And of course the inevitable coming into your room just to throw up on your floor and comforter, even though they had to pass the bathroom to get to your bedroom, because kids are dumb. You say to yourself, someday everything will balance out and you'll finally make up for all that lost sleep. My progeny are both in their teens. My wife and I have never, ever, ever made up that lost sleep. We could sleep for 20 days straight and still never make up the lost sleep we had in the first 6 years of our kids' lives. The more of these freebie credits projects you take on, the longer it will take you to make up the money. In some respects, you will always be in the hole. But more importantly, for most crew members, the credits will never, ever pay off in the way of future gigs. Never, ever, ever. Much like the band showcases I mentioned, when the project is over, you will be summarily forgotten. Remember that when you're working on commercial production or even any kind of corporate production, there's no list of credits anywhere. And when you're working on even short films, there are so many people working on the project that you get lost in the mix. Unless you're the director or maybe the DP, nobody will remember your face or your name or what you even did on the project, no matter how well you did it. The production company that sucked you in will never pay back the favor, ever. Never. They got what they needed in order to save the $500 and make a little extra profit on their project. Now that project is over and they've moved on to the next thing. Don't believe for a second that they have some kind of master list with all the names of the people that they owe paid gigs to. And if you're doing the work for your reel, which is why people do it, as I mentioned, if you're working on commercial production, there's no listed credits at the end of the spot. You're not credited, which means you can put it on your reel, but there's no proof that you actually worked on it. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry can claim that they worked on a project and slap it on their reel. Only you know the truth. A quick aside, when I was a creative director in the print world, I interviewed tons of prospective designers and art directors. Once while interviewing someone for a junior art director's position, the applicant proudly spread his portfolio across my desk, and on the very first page, the first page was one of my ads that I did at a previous job. And not a very good one to boot. I had great fun grilling him on the behind the scenes of that particular ad, just to see him sweat a little bit. There are a lot of dishonest people out there, and I get it. I get it. You're just trying to get your break, I understand. But come on, man, if you're gonna steal someone else's work, at least steal a good piece of work. But I digress. Now, some of you smarty pants types are chomping at the bit to squawk out the 4 little words you think will beat the system. Get it in writing, meaning create some kind of contract with the person who's asking for the freebie so that later on down the line they'll pay you back for the work. A kind of guarantee that you'll get a makeup project down the line. Good luck with that. If you choose not to work on the project for free, the person on the other end of the phone has 10 people on hold who have also responded to the ad. They couldn't care less. You're not that special. Remember, they didn't pick you out of a basket of cherries. You responded to what is essentially an open call. So they're not dying for you to work on this. They'll just move on to the next person. They have zero inclination to make good on any future projects, or to that end to act as any kind of reference for you to verify your credits on the project. And for the record, back when I started, I actually did get one in writing. You know what happened? The person who I made that agreement with left the position. And the new person that came into the job had no idea what I was talking about and had no intentions of honoring any make-believe agreement. So even when I presented them with the written document, they were like, well, I'm not gonna honor that. That was Carl. He did that with you. So take your get it in writing and stick it right up your taint, because it's absolutely meaningless. Do not work for credits. Do not work for credits, do not work for credits, do not work for credits. Are there exceptions? Sure, of course there are. If you're a director or a DP and you want stuff just to stack onto your reel, doing one or two of these maximum could actually help accomplish that. Maximum. Those are high-profile positions, and there's a good chance that the production company will remember you and your name later on down the line, and at least verify that you worked on the project should you need the reference later. But remember what I mentioned about dishonest people trying to break in and using pieces on their reel. And also keep in mind that usually a director or a DP has already been hired when they start looking for the additional freebie crew. Those people are on board already. They're just looking to supplement. If it's a great cause, if it's a charitable organization, a cause you believe in strongly, especially if it has anything to do with the well-being of animals, absolutely take it. You should follow your passions that way. And at that point, it's actually a donation. So with a little legwork and a receipt, if the cause is tax deductible, you can write that off on your taxes. So you're kind of breaking even. If it's a close friend or associate who needs some crew for his or her project, of course do it, of course. They will absolutely act as a reference for you down the line, and they will probably do their best to pull you into some paid gigs down the line as well. So with a friend, you will likely get the credit you were working for and fully deserve. And lastly, if it's a true apprenticeship. But I will caveat by saying that an apprenticeship only has value if it provides real-world education towards your career. There are education apprenticeships and there are credit apprenticeships. For an education apprenticeship, if you're actually doing hands-on work and not just moving around a 60-pound tripod and making coffee runs all day, absolutely do it. You can chalk it up to real education that you're not paying for, which is great. But a credit apprenticeship only has value if the person you're apprenticing for is a very high-profile, well-known person. If you're an aspiring DP and you have the chance to apprentice for Roger Deakins, holy shit, take it. But if you're apprenticing for local DP Johnny Komasayama, no one will give a flying fuck. And again, be forewarned that Mr. Deakins might be just a little too busy to act as a reference for you. You'll note that I'm using the word apprentice and not using the word intern, because I do not believe in unpaid internships. I think internships are a nice, fancy word for free labor. If you're working, you should get paid, even if it's just minimum wage, you should get something for your work. I do not believe in unpaid interns. But beyond those exceptions that I mentioned, working for credits never pays off. Now, I did say there's a difference between working for credits and earning your bones. You're starting out, you have no name recognition or equity of any kind. You need to get your feet wet and get started. And everyone in the business has been there with very few exceptions. But that doesn't mean working for free. It means assigning yourself a ridiculously low hourly rate, or a day rate that's so low, they'd be crazy not to put you even on the most miserly projects. You won't make a mint, but you won't be in the red either. And there is no shame at all at breaking even on projects in the first year or two of your career. You need to learn and grow and trudge through the mud just like everyone else. Eventually your star and your bank balance will rise. So back to where I started, and please, I'm begging you to remember these words. Your time has value. Don't let anyone ever tell you differently. No matter how tempting it might be, do not work for credits.
Shame.
And if you're a production company
Shame.
and you're engaged in this practice,
shame
on you. Stop that shit immediately. You're only doing it to save pennies and make a bigger profit for yourself, and it's dishonest to say the least. Keep it up, and I promise to use this forum or any other at my disposal to continually besmirch your name until no one will ever answer your calls ever again, and your office is closed and you reopen as a check cashing store. It's a gross, insane practice that I thought was long dead, but somehow it survived like a cockroach. The disgusting, seedy gall it takes to ask people to work for free when you have zero intention of ever paying them back is 150% bananas. Lastly, I want to thank some people that helped me put this show together. The amazing folks at The Garden Creative, thanks so much guys for your support. My great friend Buzz Burbank for loaning his golden throat to the project. And don't forget to check out his podcast, by the way.
Thanks, JR.
The unending talent of my brother Billy Lincoln. And these jokers.
We're done with the Adobe web channel filming. We need to go get my brakes fixed. By the way, nothing says midlife crisis like a 50-year-old man doing your web channel. Also, Mom said I could sell your equipment for college money, so I posted it up on Craigslist.
If you dig the show, please like and subscribe. Also, tap that little dopey bell to be notified when new videos are up. Hope you enjoyed Hollywood Grump. Until next time, leave.